Welcome to Life, Lafter Divorce, episode 5. We are back again for the 5th time.
5 times.
5 times. I am Leanne Linsky, your host.
I'm the boyfriend.
You still are.
You're lucky.
You're what?
Sorry, you're lucky I'm still around here.
Oh, you're lucky, Mr. 5 is a record for me.
Probably me too. So, what do we got today? What are we going to talk about?
Well, today I actually have a scenario for you. So,
Ruh-roh.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to give you a little scenario and I'm going to ask you to name 5 things for me. So the scenario is you are newly divorced and you have decided that you're going to take some time off for yourself and not date. You are not dating. You're brokenhearted. You are not dating. Give me the first 5 things that come to mind that you are going to spend your time doing. Go.
I'm going to reconnect with some friends.
1.
Some guy friends. I will probably try some different restaurants that my significant or former significant other didn't like to go to.
2.
Probably spend some time to myself and read and just reconnect with myself.
3.
Probably catch up on some guy movies that my significant other didn't want to go see.
4.
And probably road trips. I like getting in a car and just driving for a while and getting to see a little bit of the country.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, you drive like on a road trip every day, just getting to work.
And thanks for reminding me. LA traffic.
Yeah. So that's 5. That's 5. So that's pretty good. It's a lot of alone. It doesn't sound like you're going to be doing a lot of partying.
No, I'm beyond that in my life now. It's just it's reconnecting with myself and my friends that I don't get to see as much.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you already have a plan. Just kidding.
Boy Scouts, be prepared. How about you? What are your top 5 things?
That's a good question.
It's your question.
I know. It's a very good question, doggone it. Let's see. Number 1, probably travel. 2, I would spend more time with friends. 3.
She's making the hand signs as she's counting this out, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm counting on my fingers. 3, I would probably hit more open mics. 4, I would be at the gym more often. And 5, I'd probably buy a new car.
Yeah, it's probably good.
No, I only say buy a new car because after each divorce, that's what I did. I'd buy a new car. And, well, 1, because I totaled one, and the other time, it was just time to get a new car.
Well, that aside,
Yeah.
The list that you mentioned, other than travel, you do now.
Yeah.
You did a lot of mics. You get up and go to the gym every morning.
Yeah.
You do a lot of these things already.
Yeah, so do you. You do a lot of your things as well. I was noticing when you said them. I guess when I put my list together now, I'm thinking of when I went through my divorces and I wasn't doing those things.
So now that you've been able to continue those things even in your new relationship.
Yes. And I think that being with somebody who does his thing, it makes me realize I need to do mine as well.
And
it's healthy.
It makes a healthier relationship. We don't resent each other for those things. We still live our lives, but we live them together.
Right.
So that's good.
So if we were to break up, boy, what would I do? I'd probably stay home and eat a lot of bad foods and not work out. I guess would it go backwards? Do opposite day?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I don't know what goes
it's
on
weird
in
because
your
when
head.
it's a parade. But it's interesting because when we go through breakups, we tend to do things that we're normally not doing in the relationship. We break up, it's not like, I'm going to do more of that.
And that's probably because you weren't being yourself in that relationship, or you didn't have the space to be yourself.
Yeah.
which probably a sign of a break or a bad relationship, which leads to breakups. So
I think it is a possible sign of a bad relationship, but who knows? Maybe there are people who like what they've morphed into after they've been in coupledom for a while.
yeah, I'm sure that is, but whether that's healthy or not, who knows? So why the question today? Where did this come from?
I actually can't say this was my idea. I got this idea from today's guest.
Wow.
Yes.
So who's our guest today?
Our guest today is John Lenore. He's an aspiring actor and writer. He came very, 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 very well prepared today, and I'll let him tell you his story. So without further ado. Thank you for joining me here at Life Lafter Divorce. Good to have you here.
Good to be here.
And so you drove in all the way from Anaheim.
Yeah.
Good. You missed the traffic, which is nice. So we're here today. We want to hear about you because you've been divorced once, right?
Correct.
Right. And it's been how many years?
Well, it's a long process, but we started the process, I think, in 2014. And it's almost finalized. There's been some paperwork problems because we lived in different states. So getting the paperwork in and accepted and everything has been a bit of a challenge. But I did get an email this week that it was resubmitted to the courts. I guess they'd turned it down because they didn't like the notary or something crazy like that. So we had to resubmit it. But it's almost done. But we've been living apart since about 2012.
Wow. So it's amazing to me how long it can take to process paperwork for something. And it just kind of drags it out for you.
Yeah, it can be a really short process. I mean, my sister got a divorce and it seemed like it was started and over in 6 months.
And where does she live?
Michigan.
Oh, really? Interesting. Now, mine have been in Nevada, both my divorces, and they were done within a couple of weeks from beginning to end. It seems so quick.
Yeah.
And cheap.
It can be very fast and very affordable. Well, you're a woman, so it's going to be cheap. But the guy's still going to be expensive in Nevada. But
no, I was the one who I was the one who hired the attorney, and we used the same attorney, and we just split the $500 fee. And then the second time, it was the same attorney I went back to, and we fit the $1,000 fee. And he doubled his price on me. And I said, "What, dude?" I'm like, "What are you doing? It was only $500 the first time." He's like, "Well, clearly you didn't learn anything, so I'm charging you double."
Yeah, it seems like it should be a reverse. It should be less.
Right.
Now he already knows all your information and stuff. He just needs to change the other person's name.
I always joke that I should get a VIP card and just get punched like at a Subway or something.
Oh, yeah, you should get punches.
Yeah.
Although you don't really want to get to 20 divorces just to get a free one.
I really don't. But I heard recently that there are some people who've been on upwards of a lot of divorces, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So you're on your first divorce.
On the first one, yep. Almost completed.
And hopefully
paperwork
the last. And so when did you well, first of all, we know you drove in from Anaheim. Where are you from originally?
I'm originally from the Detroit area. So
Okay.
I'm originally from Michigan.
That makes sense, and that's where your sister still is.
And most of my family still lives in the Midwest. My daughter and ex live in Iowa, but most of my family lives in Michigan.
Wow, it's nice and cold there right now.
Oh, yeah.
So you were in Michigan. Is that where you and your ex met?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And how did you meet?
She's foreign, and she was in the country working as a nanny.
Mm-hmm.
And I had met a nanny at a bar.
Not her, a different nanny.
A different nanny.
The nanny hangout bar.
They were all hanging out there one night, and
were they really all together? Like
there
bunch
was
of them?
4 of them, and they were all at this club. And I picked one up, and there was this other one I set up with my friend, and mine ended up going the way mine usually go, and he ended up marrying the girl that I introduced him to, and that girl introduced me to my eventual wife.
Okay, and so the one you said they go the usual way. What route do they usually go?
Oh, well, it's just that the one
out.
I picked, it was it didn't go very far. Within a month, it was over. But the one I picked for him worked out great.
And then in return, he gave you the favor of introducing you to your almost ex-wife.
He did. And for a long time, it was a really positive, uplifting story. And then we both got divorced. And it wasn't quite the Hallmark movie that we thought it would be.
Yeah. So it was really good for, how long did you know each other before you got married? It was pretty quick, wasn't it?
Yeah, I only knew her for 6 months before we got married.
That's a very short amount of time.
It is. It wasn't ideal. We wanted a longer engagement, but because of the immigration issues, it would have been difficult for her to leave and then come back. Some countries, that's easier than other countries.
Right. Should I even ask where she's from?
She's from Latvia, which is over by Lithuania, Estonia, kind of the old Russian republics.
Got it. And so it was best if you guys got married to keep her here.
Well, it was that wasn't really why we did it. It was just that to not do it that way and for her to go back, I guess some countries don't necessarily give their ladies visas to get married, and go somewhere else. I may have had to go there to marry her, or we would have had to go through an expensive process to. Not all countries are like that, but
it would have been complicated.
It would have been a lot more complicated. But in retrospect, I think that it would have given us the time we needed to kind of realize that we were rushing into it, or that we needed to reconsider some more things. So it would have been better, I think, for her to go back and just kind of go that route. That's the route my friend went. The one that he met, the nanny he met, was she went back to her home country of Argentina for a while and had to do paperwork and stuff. But he was the whole time she was there, he was worried that she wasn't going to come back. So
really? And now how long was their engagement? A long time?
Well, they knew each other for about 9 months before they decided to get married. But then she went home for another 3 months, I think, while she was doing the paperwork stuff.
So it gave them some time to kind of go through
Gave her time
work.
to reconsider.
Yeah. Interesting. So, okay, so you guys got married in 6 months.
Yep.
And what happened next?
We stayed married for about 15 years.
That's a long time.
Well, it's long in Leanne time. But...
Yes, it's long. Yes, it is. It's like a lifetime in Leanne time.
You could have been married 4 times.
At least. Right? I mean, yeah, let's see if I average about two and a half years a piece.
But yours are probably, that's a more exciting way to do it. It doesn't get as stale as fast when it's every
Well, I just look at
years.
it, as when I was performing and stuff in New York, I just looked at it as like I did all the marriage and divorce and celebrity stuff first, and now I'm focusing on my skills.
There you go.
So I just did it backwards. So 15 years, and that's including up till now, right? Or no, up until 2014 when you filed.
We were married in the end of 99.
Okay.
So you could say 12 years from when we sort of started the process, or you could say 17 years because it's still going on. But,
right.
So I figure 15 is kind of in the middle. It's safe.
Yeah. So you guys have been splitting up for some time. How's it been? How do you feel?
Well, I kind of, in preparation for the podcast, I was kind of thinking of like the best things about being divorced and the worst things about being divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked to a buddy of mine about it, who the same guy that he's also divorced, and we kind of talked through some of those items. And I could come up with 10 great things about being divorced. I could come up with 10 bad things, but
right.
I think it just depends on the situation.
So tell me what those best things are.
You want the best things?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're like an optimist.
Best things.
Well, in reviewing the best things, I realized, and the worst things as well, I realized that a lot of them are not necessarily great just because you're divorced. They're great because nobody's living with you, or so like you could have the same problems with a roommate as a wife, right?
You could say the great things about having a Craigslist roommate and the best things about not having a Craigslist
right. You could use a lot of, I would say 70% of them were the same.
Right.
So if I filtered those ones out, but like, I guess if I filter those ones out, number 9 on my list is that new girls have shorter memories. women you're married to or you've been going out with a long time, they seem to remember everything wrong you've ever done in your life. And it will come up in ways that, you'll be arguing about a sandwich and then you'll be reminded that 13 years ago you said something insensitive at a party. Now I don't have to worry about that. Now I meet women, they may be crazy, they may have all kinds of problems, but at least they don't remind me of, crap I did
10 years ago because they didn't know you then.
Right.
Right. But right now they're cataloging it for later.
Now they're cataloging it for later, but that's okay.
Because there won't be a later.
There might not be a later. It's a good chance there's not going to be a later.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
And then the other two, number 2 on my list was like, it's kind of similar, is that you don't live in fear. I don't mean fear like...
What kind of people are you married
Well, I'm
to?
not, again, I want to clarify this because that sounds bad. I'm not saying live in fear like a woman who's being beaten. That's obviously a really high level of fear. I'm talking about just the fear that you're going to do something or say something wrong and you're going to get, a cold shoulder. You're going to have to fight about it. You're going to, I'm not really big on confrontation, and that probably wasn't the best strategy for marriage. I think you have to have some conflict, and we were very non-conflict. We never fought. We never yelled.
Did you feel like you were walking on eggshells all the time?
I did. And
even at the beginning?
No, but about 2 years in.
Really?
Yeah. About 2 years in, it felt like, okay, you can either be yourself and do your own thing and deal with the ramifications, or you can walk on eggshells.
Oh, that's concerning.
So that was probably my number 2. And
that was the best thing, that you don't feel that way anymore. Okay.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying, because I almost got into my negative. No, but and number 1 is also kind of related in that, and this is for guys, I think this would be their number 1 on most of their lists, is that once you're divorced, nobody really bugs you anymore, like all the time. I can get up, I can do whatever I want, I come home when I want, I can go where I want, and I'm not going to have to, get bothered. And
no one's going to mother you.
Nobody's going to judge. Nobody's going to,
nag at you.
Come down like, why are you wearing those? You wore those clothes yesterday. What are you doing? Why are you watching that game? It's like, so I'd say those were the 3 that were sort of marriage related on the best list that had nothing to do with your roommate situation.
So basically you kind of like living on your own.
I do.
Yeah.
I do but I like living on my own, except for bedtime and wake up time. All the rest of the time, I'm fine living on my own.
Are you scared of the dark?
No. I wish that was the good answer, though.
No.
I wish that was my answer.
So what were the best...
I just get a nightlight.
So those are the best things about being divorced. What are the worst things about it?
Well, worst things... Again, I looked at the list and like 7 out of the 12 were roommate related,
I'm impressed. You have, okay, so just so you guys know, because you guys can't see this, our listeners, is that John came fully prepared with like a legal pad of notes for you guys. So this is incredible. I want you guys to, everybody at home, to take out a pad of paper and write this down. This is good stuff.
And I want everybody at home to realize that I didn't really come that prepared. I just have a pen and 2 little pieces of paper I jotted a bunch of crap on. But no, for worst, and this is one that I wanted to bring up because I recently went on your website and I saw that you did like a little video and you actually kind of talked about this. But given the timing of this podcast, like you go home for Christmas and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'd say number 10 on my worst list was holidays, especially this time, because this was like the first time I was back home with relatives I hadn't seen in a long time. So you start to see people at holiday time that haven't seen you since you were married. And it's a very tricky situation. And you kind of were walking through some, humorous ways to deal with it. But it is kind of tricky.
It is. It's very tricky because people don't know what to say, or they think they know what to say, and leaves you in a very awkward position most of the time.
And it's important to remember that, even though it's an uncomfortable kind of horrible feeling for you, and I think you might have touched on this in your video, it's also kind of horrible for them.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what to say. And
Absolutely.
they don't,
Absolutely. And there's always that chance, we walk a fine line. I think that's the biggest thing that I ran into when I was going through my divorces. Because my ex-husband and I had worked together for a long time. So going into work every day, I was always confronted with people's questions, whether it was a questioning look or a comment or whatever it may be. And that was my challenge. And I had to find that comfort zone because, number one, I had to work with these people. So I didn't want to make it horrible and I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings or be abrasive, but I had to find that place where it took the tension out and made it okay. So like they did their due diligence of making sure I was okay by asking the question, even though it may have been inappropriate. And then it was up to me to get them off the hook.
Okay.
Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And, but it's an awkward time and holidays and family and, you covered it in your video, but, number 9 on my list is that I miss my dog because she got the dog in the divorce. So,
oh, wow.
But, and then there's the money side of it, which is not as nice as what we talked about earlier
right.
In California. It can be, I would say the money side of it is why the process went from being, a 6-month or 2-month process to being, years and years, because we actually started talking about divorce in 2009, but financially there was just no way it was going to work. And unfortunately, you hear that a lot, especially when you talk to male divorcees that, they wanted to divorce sooner or they both wanted to divorce sooner, but financially there was just no way to make it work. And that's unfortunate. But
that is because I can't imagine having that drag out. And I've heard this from so many people, so I feel for you. To know that something's over yet still be connected to that person, it takes that much longer to heal, I would think.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, in 2014, my ex actually moved in with me for a year as she was looking for work in California.
So was that extremely challenging? Or
challenging doesn't even do it justice. That was
horrifying.
It was very, very uncomfortable. She slept in my daughter's room with my daughter, and I slept in my room. And all of her stuff was kind of just sitting everywhere, unpacked or not, still packed up. And,
right.
Obviously I wasn't doing any dating or anything like that. But it was very uncomfortable and very nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Talk about walking on eggshells.
Oh, yeah. Especially when it's already in the works.
Right. I mean, that's terrible. I've been in a similar situation, not with my ex-husband, but where we were stuck living together for a while, and it was just a nightmare. Not an easy thing. Not an easy thing. And you did that for a long period of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Number 6 on my list, which is one that I was going to ask you about because this one was kind of unique, is you have no more firsts. And what I mean by that is once you get married and you do all that kind of stuff, maybe you have kids, maybe you don't, whatever, you're not ever going to be the first anything anymore. You're not going to be the person's first, it's not going to be your first marriage. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be your first divorce in some cases. In both our cases, it wouldn't be our first divorce. It's not going to be our first sexual partner. It's not going to be our first lover. It's not going to be our first relationship. All of our firsts are kind of behind us now.
Right.
And that's kind of difficult to deal with. And I can get into that a little more because my friend and I, when we talked about it, we talked about the stigma of divorce and how you deal with that.
Yes.
And that's kind of related in that, if you've been divorced, there's 2 guaranteed things about you, no matter what the situation. Mm-hmm. One is that you've failed at marriage.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily mean it was your fault. It just means that in terms of the definition of a successful marriage versus a unsuccessful, yours does not meet the definition of successful because you're divorced.
Don't you find that, I'm going to stop there. Don't you find, how do you feel when people say, oh, your marriage failed? Or have you come across that?
Well, it relates to another one on the list, which is failure, is that some people, I think, deal with it okay, but other people, I think, have trouble with it. I mean, my friend and I, we talked about that at great length, was that you feel like a failure. You've failed, to live up to your vows. You failed to, stay married. You failed your kids. So you have that feeling of failure all the time.
Yeah.
And, some people can get past it, but it's always there.
And do you feel that way now mostly, or have you gotten past it?
No, I say I still feel it now. And one of the things about both the lists, when I kind of looked over them, is that the underlying theme in terms of whether or not you're going to be happy after your divorce or whether or not you're going to be sad, as depressing and not uplifting as the answer is, it seems like people who find somebody else are happy. People who don't are sad. Now, there may be exceptions to that. There's people like me that love, to be alone and stuff. But as me and my friend were talking about, when you run into somebody and you say you're divorced, are you happy? And they say yes, there's like a 97% chance that they're dating someone, they're in a relationship.
They've moved on.
Well, yeah, they've had that ability to move on.
Right.
And if you meet, even if they haven't moved on, but they just, are on the rebound and they found somebody, having somebody in their life, if fulfilling that role, seems to make
them better.
Right.
I've noticed that too. It's interesting because I found that when I would talk to people shortly after my divorce was final, and I don't remember how people bring stuff. I mean, people bring stuff up. They ask the weirdest questions when you've been divorced and they find out, or even when you start dating again. And they're like, have you been married before? And, and you have to answer that question out on a date, a first date or something. It's like, yes. And then they ask what happened. And it's like, number one, I don't really want to sit there and tell you about my previous relationship. That's like the number one dating no-no is to spend your dinner talking about your ex or what happened, and what I found, my go-to answer was it was meant to be and it's meant to be over. And a couple of times people were like, oh, well, you had a couple failed marriages or something. And I was like, whoa, let's back it up. I don't consider falling in love with somebody a failure. I don't consider it a failure. It didn't last. And maybe it wasn't supposed to be. But I don't look at it as necessarily I failed at something. This was what it was. This is what it was supposed to be. And after a while, it's kind of like fake it till you make it. I found myself being on the defense of that answer because at the time when I was first going through it, I didn't feel like I had failed. I knew in my heart that I had tried. I knew I had made efforts with my ex to make things work, and I felt that I had done those things. And so it wasn't until later that I felt more of the hit of it not working out, and maybe I didn't do enough. But I really took offense when other people would tell me what they thought without knowing any of the facts. That, oh, well, you have 2 failed marriages or you failed at marriage. So it's not like a test and I got graded on it. You know what I mean? But I can understand being that other person and why I would say that as the other person. But being in the place of hurt, I had a hard time dealing with someone's comment like that. I don't know if you do too. Or...
No, I agree. And I used to listen to a radio show. Actually, I think the person was based in New York, so you probably know her. But Dr. Joy Brown, psychologist. She's a pretty popular radio show back in the day. I don't know if she's still on. But anyway, she had an interesting show. And a lot of times people would call in. A lot of times it was women calling in saying, I'm thinking about getting a divorce. I don't know what to do. And they would always list all these reasons why they can't do it. And she would always sort of answer with, at the end of their deliberation, if you had $1 million, would you divorce? And almost always you can either tell in their voice or in their answer that the answer is yes. And she said, if you had $1 million and you divorce, you should probably get a divorce. Now, there is a hole in that theory in that, yeah, if I had $1 million, I could do a lot of things.
Right.
But her point of it is that, you can't just keep it going and use a bunch of excuses. And there's another stigma with divorce that's it's not just about the failure. It sort of depends on who ended it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For your divorces, who ended? Who was the one that decided?
I was the one who decided.
In both cases?
Yeah. And I think that's why I felt justified in being like, it was a decision well made. It wasn't, so I felt more okay with it because I felt I had a say in that decision. Now, going forward in serious, a couple of serious relationships I had later, much years and years later after my marriages, and it wasn't my decision, that I had a much harder time coping with.
I think it's harder to cope with ones when it's not your decision.
Agreed.
My best friend, his wasn't his decision. His wife just decided and gave him paperwork one day.
Yeah.
And, they didn't go to counseling or anything like that. She didn't want to do that. So he was kind of on the receiving end of the shaft. But there's the one stigma for people who it was their decision. It's something that he doesn't have to deal with quite as much is, for me, if I meet somebody who's been divorced and it was their decision, I know that I'm on a pretty short leash. Like relationship number 2, they're not going to put up with all the crap they put up with in relationship number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Relationship number 2, you talk about walking on eggshells, They know how to push that button. You have your lawyer on speed dial. He's giving you
right. I have a membership.
Yeah,
a law firm.
Right. And that's why they have statistics that show that like people who know people that are divorced are more likely to get divorced.
It's interesting. So on that note, I would have thought so too. And in several relationships afterward, I would say yes, that was true. And then as I've gotten older and I've had some relationships, in more recent years, it was the exact opposite. It kind of flip-flopped on me. And I went from being the person who would end the relationships to the person who was the dumpee rather than the dumper. And I think in my mind, as I've gotten older, I decided that I wasn't going to give up so quickly. And I kind of stuck it out, even when it was long overdue to get out. Like even when the other person's like, and I was like, no, this time I'm going to actually stick around and try and work this puppy out. And that backfired in my face. So I kind of went from one side of it all the time. And then I went and tried the other side and that didn't work either. So, so there is hope that people can change over time, but I think you're right. Because I can see why they would say that. And that's very interesting. So now when you date somebody, because you've been dating, right?
Yes.
And then have you met someone else who's been divorced?
Oh, a lot of people.
And
almost everybody in my age range is going to be.
And so do you feel that, though, when you meet somebody else, that, like you said, you're on a short leash?
I feel like if, this might be why when, you're out dating and people ask you, well, not now, but when you were out dating, if people asked you, well, tell me about your divorce, one of the reasons I would ask that question is that even if I know you've been divorced, I want to kind of know why. Was it because your ex was kind of a douche, or was it because you're crazy? And, and in order to find that out, you kind of got to figure out who ended it, and you got to kind of figure out why. One of the questions I used to always ask on a date, and I think it annoyed people, so I stopped, was, what was the thing you liked most about your ex? Rather than ask them because if you start asking a girl why they hate their ex, that's going to take up 2 hours of time and it's going to be a downer. But if you ask her, what did you like about you? At least that she can look at it in a fair way and say, you know what, it wasn't a good situation. I'm glad I got out. But yes, there were some great things about him. Mm-hmm. If you meet someone and they're still in the mindset of there's nothing good about him, he's a horrible human being and deserves to die. Right. They might not be ready to date. They might still have some issues they need to work on. Does that make sense?
No, that makes total sense. And that's good on you for finding the right questions to ask somebody in that situation, because instead of you saying, I want to know whose fault this whole thing was, you know what I mean? Like, can you imagine? Those are some good questions. And that's, I don't remember what I would ask people. I don't even know how many people I dated that ended up being divorced later. Maybe a couple. I'm sure a lot of them had never been married.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of the people who I've dated have actually never been married. And yeah, I was the one being more interrogated than the other way around.
I've had some women who, and again, Dr. Joy Brown in her show, she always tells you that once you get a divorce, you should wait a year and not date for an entire year.
I think that's a smart move.
I think it's smart. It's just really hard to do.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, you're going to be miserable until you meet somebody else. So essentially she's saying be miserable for an entire year.
I don't know if would you really be miserable until you found someone else?
I wouldn't be miserable myself because I like being alone.
Yeah.
But like I said, when you talk to people who've been divorced, the number one differentiation between happy and sad is
when they're with somebody.
Are they with somebody? And if they're intentionally not dating for a year, that's going to be a pretty miserable year for them. It's going to be cool for like the first 3 months because they're just going to be running around the house naked and watching videos and, playing video games because they got nobody to police them or mother them in your
You just described all men.
Yeah.
Right now.
So for the first 3 months, it's going to be like a kid in a candy store.
Right.
But then after that, they're going to like look around and say, well, this stinks, and, but yeah, I ran into a situation that was kind of a funny story as I was on a website. This was early on in my online dating thing. And, I wrote on one of my I made kind of like a funny profile, just to joke around. And in there, I was like, I said something, I had a list of like all my things where if like this applied to you, I'm out, and they were meant to be funny and most people took them that way. One of the things on the list was, if you don't drink, I'm not interested. and then I put, to qualify that, I said, because, I'm really not that entertaining if you're sober. And it was meant as a joke, but there was one lady that replied and she was irate. She was like, well, I saw your profile. I guess you're not interested in me because I don't drink. And it's like, well, then why did you respond to the profile?
Right.
Now you're just being kind of mean.
Now you're just being sour grapes.
Yeah. So I responded to her and asked, about and I told her it was meant as, to be kind of funny, but, and she was the most angry person. Like she was so mad. She went in this big, essay about how her husband drank too much and he cheated on her multiple times. And I'm like, okay, this is
way too far and where I didn't intend it to go.
You need to smoke way more weed than you're smoking right now because you're angry and stressing me out.
Right. She's kind of letting me have it. It's interesting. And so going back to your list, because
well, the last two on the list that were divorce related are kind of like the biggest bummer. And I don't know. Do you have kids?
No, I don't.
Okay.
None that I know of.
None that you know of. Well, for you, you're going to know.
I don't know.
But the kid related ones were number 2 and number 1 on the list. And number 2 is you fear that you've damaged the kids somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Being divorced when you don't have kids, no matter how bad you think it is so much better than being divorced when you have kids. And every time something happens in your kid's life that's negative, whether they fail a test or they, cry about something, you immediately think, oh, I've screwed them up,
Right.
Like that's every guy I know that has a daughter and the guy is divorced. Their biggest fear is that because of the divorce, their daughter's going to be a stripper. And every guy brings that up, no matter what no matter their religion, their ethnicity. Every time you talk to them, it's like, yeah, I'm worried she's going to be, on the pole, and it's going to be because I got a divorce.
Wow.
And that leads to number 1, which is telling the kids. Telling your kids is going to be the hardest, worst step of the divorce. Even if your husband, beats you up because you wanted to divorce him, I would take a beating over telling the kids.
Really?
Telling the kids is a horrible experience.
How did you approach your daughter, right?
Yes.
You have a daughter.
I have a daughter.
And how old was she when you had to tell her?
Well, now I have to remember how old she is now. She was probably 11 or 12 when we told her. I think 11.
Wow. Okay, that's a hard age already. You're getting into right before the preteens.
Yeah.
So were you the one who told her?
Well, it was supposed to be a joint thing, but then the wife kind of couldn't really take it, so she left and went and stood in the hallway. But that's not uncommon. You sit down with the intent that you're going to tell them together, and then you realize how horrible of a process this is, and you just sometimes you can't take it. And I was able to tell her, but she did not take it very well, and it was horrible. But it subsides.
How is she doing now?
Pretty good from what I know. But again, I don't know.
You don't know. I mean, she's not on the pole.
No.
Okay.
But she's pretty young for that.
Well,
so
we're off
thank
to a
God.
good start.
We're off to a good start.
Okay. So that's rough. What else? Did you have another one on there?
Well, no, those were 1 and 2. All
Okay.
of the other ones I realized were all of the ones on the best list were, things that were like roommate related. Like, for instance, my bathroom makes more sense now. For years, I had no idea what the hell was going on in my bathroom. There were things everywhere. There were cans of everything. There were all kinds of little tools and things that I guess women use, like on their face, and little crimpy things, and baskets of like loofahs and all kinds of stuff. So now I can go in my bathroom and it's like shaving cream, a toothbrush, everything makes sense.
A towel, you're good.
Yeah,
You probably don't even have a bath mat on the floor.
I do, but I had a bath mat and I tried to put it in the washer, and I guess they're not made for that or something, because all it did was dissolve into a bunch of strings.
No.
So I had to get another one.
Yeah, that's not. Usually you can put them in the washer, not the dryer.
Yeah, maybe I put it in the dryer.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
Because the bottoms are rubber, so if you put it in the dryer, it's probably gonna.
Well, I did, I
push up
screwed it
further.
up. But then I found one that was really cool at Ross, so I got that one. But once it gets dirty, I'm kind of gun shy with washing it. I might just throw it out.
Throw it out, get a new one.
Things like health insurance is a little cheaper.
Yes.
That's not bad.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Pet ownership is easier. You can have
you can have a pet, or you didn't have a pet before?
Well, no, but
you got the dog. No, she got the dog.
Well, if you're married, pet ownership
Is good.
is easier. If you have somebody,
Co-parenting the pet.
Right. You have the bed to yourself, which at times is horrible.
Like when you're in it?
Yeah.
Right.
At times that's horrible, but at times, especially in that first few months, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's like your whole, you have your whole universe there. You can roll around, you can sleep upside down, you can do whatever you want. There's nobody, pulling covers off you, that's great.
Gosh, you guys didn't have a good time sleeping, did you?
Well, it's if you slept together with somebody for 15 years, having them out of the bed like once in a while, you're kind of like, oh.
Got it. 15. Okay, yeah. Okay.
It's like you can spread out. You can.
I can't imagine what 15 years is like, so I guess that's why I didn't understand that one.
My buddy brought this one up, which is a given on any guy list, is that there's a possibility you're going to get laid by new
fresh meat.
Yes.
Okay. Who is this buddy you're bringing up?
No, it's the guy that I told you about who's also divorced, and he met his wife.
We should have him on the podcast.
We should. I'm gonna tell him that he should do it.
We'll have to have you come back and we'll have a discussion.
He'll have to call in from Michigan, but
we could do that.
But yeah, he also brought up one that I didn't have on my list. He said never having to compromise, which is interesting because it kind of depends on what kind of relationship you had. Like, one of the problems in my marriage was I don't think we ever really did compromise. We just did our own thing. Like he said, well, what I said, what do you mean by never having to compromise? And he said, well, like, I can watch whatever I want on TV, and, I don't have to watch what she wants to watch. So, well, that's not really a reason to get a divorce, but
Right.
I mean, granted, if your wife's watching like The Bachelor and Desperate Housewives and stuff, it's going to drive you crazy. But I don't know if it's divorcing them crazy. But never having to compromise, and I would say that for me, never having to compromise meant something a little bit different, and that is, with your hobbies and stuff, you don't have to do things they want to do.
Right.
Again, not a great reason to divorce. And to play devil's advocate, one of the advantages for me of having a relationship is that they make you do things,
that you wouldn't normally
that you wouldn't normally do.
I mean, there is the upside to that, because there was a lot of things I ended up doing, or places I would travel as a result, that I would never have gone otherwise.
Oh, absolutely.
I wouldn't have any reason to do that. And at the same time, I do remember when I got my second divorce, as I was like, thank God I don't ever have to golf again. It was like, oh, that was like watching paint dry. Yeah. And then what did I do? Like a year later, I joined a golf league. But it is. I think there is a lot of compromise to it. And there are pros and cons to it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, it comes with anything you get is going to come with the good and the bad.
And on the worst list, there's little things like, this is probably one of my little, but also really annoying things, is applying suntan lotion at the beach. Sucks when you don't have
someone to do it for
Yeah.
you.
I always end up with like a little red dot, like in the center of my back that I couldn't quite reach. So that's cool. Not having to deal with like hookers or anything like that. That's a good thing. When you're married, you don't have to pay for it.
Well, no. Yeah, your wife pays for your hookers when you're married.
Well, yeah, depending on your marriage. But if you're sick or hungover, you have somebody to
Nurse
assist you.
Yeah.
That's always nice and comforting. We talked a little bit about the stigma already. The one, and we talked about failure and guilt, but I guess the only other one on my list was, and this was one that my buddy also talked about at great length, is the loneliness factor. And the loneliness factor is huge after you've been divorced, because especially if you've been together with somebody for 15 years, you're used to somebody being around.
Yeah.
And now there's nothing. There's nobody. And guys don't have the same social network that women have. We don't have those close people that we meet with for coffee every Monday or something. I have a couple close friends that don't live in the state. I have some other friends, but guys develop friendships slowly, and it takes a long time.
This is true. Guys do that.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of close friends. We have a lot of people we know. We have a lot of acquaintances, but to develop, bonding with guys takes years and years and years.
Right. Whereas girls, we throw on a pair of yoga pants, grab a coffee cup, go walk a dog, and we have like 10 new friends in an hour.
It's crazy.
Right?
It's crazy. I don't know how you guys keep track of all that. But yeah, the thing about the loneliness, and my buddy was the one that brought it up, and he's absolutely right, is that loneliness kind of trumps misery. And that's why you see a lot of people in bad marriages, and they stay married for a long time, and they, do everything they can to work it out, even if they don't have kids, is that they'd rather be miserable than lonely. And that's everything on of those 70% that I removed. A lot of them, like I said, you can cure them or by just finding somebody else. And the ones on the best list, you would definitely give up if you could find somebody else.
Well, now here's a question for you. Do you necessarily cure that loneliness by just finding anyone else? Or you just filling a void, kind of temporary fix?
Well, it depends on if the someone else you find is temporary.
Because you could find somebody, but is it going to be the right somebody? Because sometimes, I've dated some people where I don't feel very connected. I mean, I might spend time with them, but there's not a huge connection. And so that loneliness doesn't necessarily go away. It's another thing to be in a relationship where you're supposed to have a partnership. I remember feeling this way with one of my marriages, and I felt very alone. And
exactly.
I felt very alone, and yet I was married. And that was worse than being single and being alone, because at least single and being alone, I was supposed to be alone. I was single,
I see exactly what you're saying. And I guess the way I look at it and the way my buddy was looking at it is that at least when you're married, there are some good times in there. Now, if your marriage is at the point where every single minute of every single day is a disaster.
Well,
but
that's different.
That's different. But if you're in a regular marriage that's just kind of going downhill, and I know exactly what you mean, because I felt the same way. I felt alone in the marriage because I was living, sort of my own life, and she was living her. Felt like you were kind of roommates. But if you have, there were also some good times that you had, and you almost would be willing to deal with the misery for those few good times.
And the hopes.
Of good, of things maybe turning around.
Right.
But yeah, loneliness tends to trump misery. And that's, like I said, if you meet somebody and they're upset about being divorced, it's probably because they're not dating anybody right now.
Right. Yeah. And I noticed, did you start dating? You didn't start dating right away because you were living together still.
Well, we separated in 2012, and I moved to California, and she was still living in Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And then my daughter moved out in 2012 as well. I did start dating very little, but I did start dating in 2013. But it was uncomfortable because my daughter didn't know that the divorce was definitely going to happen and when, and we didn't really want to tell her until we knew for sure what was going on, obviously.
Right.
So I started dating just to kind of it's been a long time.
Yeah.
A lot of things change in 15 years. So I was trying to get my feet wet, but it was just such a problem dating when the process wasn't done yet, because lots of women, and rightfully so, would look at that like, oh, well, you're just dating me and then you're going back home to your wife. And it's like, I haven't slept with my wife in 4 years, but I understand where they're coming from too. There's probably a lot of sleazeball guys out there who are like, oh yeah, I'm getting a divorce, and then you find out they're not.
They're not. And then 10 years later, they're still getting a divorce. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it. I understand. But it was also really problematic because you can't really bring somebody home if you have a child there and,
right.
And the child doesn't know yet. So
and you can't really leave your kid there by herself.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was problematic, but it was just something I did very, very slightly.
Yeah. So how did you get through what got you through those times of loneliness if you weren't really dating? What did you do?
Well, you masturbate a lot. That helps.
Goes without saying, right?
Yeah, that's going to help. Because guys are really physical. So when they say they're lonely, that could mean that they're emotionally lonely, or it could mean that they just need 7 minutes of your time, or whatever their thing is. But yeah, I think I've focused a lot on other things. I focused on things that I hadn't really did anything with during the marriage. I focused on writing, I focused on comedy, and I focused on projects that I used to do when I was married just to get away from my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And now I can do kind of openly. I can take all the parts of, something out and spread them out on a blanket on my, on the kitchen counter, and I'm not going to get yelled at or, have them moved or thrown away.
Right.
So there's, I got to do all those kind of things, and it kind of took my mind off the loneliness a little bit.
Yeah. They say when you get busy, you get better.
Yeah.
So did you start doing comedy as a result after your divorce, or were you doing that all along?
I was writing all along. I started writing jokes and stuff back in, I want to say 2000, 99, 2001, somewhere around there. But I never really, I was, I guess, a bit scared of the stage. I was never good at acting or anything or getting up on stage in front of people. However, with my day job that I had, I would always do trainings and things. So I got better at getting up in front of people. And then I started doing like karaoke just to get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped. And then one day, one of my friends who's a stand-up comedian, we were at an open mic, and he said, okay, just go up there and do it. And,
right.
And then I started doing it. But I've been doing it's the stand-up side of it for about 9 months.
Okay.
And, but I've been writing for over 15 years.
That's a lot.
So I have a lot of material. I can't say how much of it is good, but,
but you have a lot of it.
Yeah.
That's
Some of
fair.
it I look at and it's so old that I'm just like, what the hell was I even talking about?
That's fair.
I should use a recorder, but I'm very old school. I still, as you mentioned, I still write. I have like a notepad in every room because when I think of things, I write.
So many comics do. Everybody carries around a little notebook and a pen.
And they say, well, why don't you just record it? And I'm like, because I don't like the way my voice sounds. And it'll annoy me. So.
I don't usually record any of mine either. I usually pen to paper.
Yeah, that's how I am.
That's how I do it. And sometimes if I want to organize it, I'll use note cards, and sometimes I'll throw it on the computer, depending on what I have with me. But more often than not, it's always pen to paper.
Yeah.
Lots of notebooks. I always have to have like a bunch of them on hand.
I did a podcast about 3 months ago, and it was funny because the sound guy in the podcast who was also participating, the host asked, what's the most frustrating thing about writing? Because I write the jokes and stuff, but I also write I'm trying to write a TV show. I'm writing a few books. And, the sound guy said, well, the toughest thing for me is trying to find a pen, like you spend 30 minutes wandering around, like, where did I put my pencil,
It's so true.
And so and that's so true, because I sit down, I'm like, okay, I'm going to get something done today. I'm going to write a chapter. And 30 minutes later, I'm like, what the hell did I do with my notepad?
Yeah, I always lose something. It'll be like I sit down, I have everything, and then I'm like, oh, I need a glass of water. And then I get up and I'm like, where'd I put my glasses? Then I said, where'd I put this? Where'd I put that? Do you write any material about your relationships and your marriage?
A little bit. I don't have a lot about marriage. I mean, I do some stuff. It's kind of like how this when I was thinking about this podcast, is that it's a difficult podcast to do because it's about a topic that isn't funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's like having comedians come in and talk about, being raped. You might be able to make that funny if you're really good. But, if you have the right crowd, but it's not a funny topic, and you have to try to make light of it and so I think a lot of my material is on dating
mm-hmm.
more so than it is on the actual marriage. I did say that, it's hard. I'll have to think of what that joke was, but it was, I think it was that it's hard looking at pornography after you're married, because now I look at pornography, but I think of other pornography that I'd like to look at. So that was kind of marriage related,
right.
but most of mine are dating.
That's interesting. All of my material is being on marriage and divorce.
It's tricky. I mean, you're qualified and, you know how to make it work, but it's a tricky topic.
It is. And it's the other interesting thing that I found, and I'm so glad you said it, because, to you, being in your comic, you're doing comedy, you've been writing for 15 years, but you can't find this funny. And the people I've been talking to for this podcast have all been comics so far. Most of them. There's been a few that haven't, but all the comics that I am talking to, I was surprised in some respects because everyone took it so seriously. And it is not a topic that they're laughing about, and everybody's been so open and honest and awesome about sharing their experiences. But in my mind, it's been a little bit somewhat surprising because I wasn't anticipating that so much, because I have such a different take on my experience. So the
one thing that I will say, is that I was thinking about divorce, and I was thinking it's kind of like when we were talking about people tend to be happy when they are in a relationship versus not. It's like buying a car. If you sell your car because
mm-hmm.
it's horrible and it keeps breaking down, it costs a lot to fix it, it's being a pain in the ass, you sell your car. And then when you get a new car, you're happy. Like, I just sold my car a year ago, and now I have a car where I can actually listen to my iPod without playing it through the radio, which sucked. I have a car where I can make a phone call hands-free without like a special thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have this car and it drives beautifully and it's nice and it still smells new.
You basically traded in the old car for a younger model.
Well,
a newer model.
It's a Nissan.
So here's something.
I may have traded it in for a younger model.
But it's a Nissan.
But as I found in the dating world, when you're in your 40s, you might be able to trade up in terms of age and on your wife, but you're probably going to have to give some stuff up.
Yes. See, now you're writing some good material already right here.
Well, just if you're dating somebody who's a lot younger than you,
mm-hmm.
first of all, if you got a divorce because you're not compatible with the other person, dating a 23-year-old probably isn't going to solve that.
No, it might solve some of your other problems.
It'll solve at least one of my other problems.
Right, for 7 minutes, and then you're good.
Well, for the record, let's say 37 minutes, but we'll have to edit out the first part. I was talking about other people, but no, but if you meet young people and they're going to annoy you. They're going to do annoying things that young people do that don't play well to old. They're going to listen to music that I don't have never heard of.
Right, and don't want to hear from. And they're going to be texting and doing things and referencing things that make no sense.
And they're just going to be doing things that I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my 40s. But we would look at them as rude. Like if you're on a date and somebody's on their phone like this the whole time, wait, they can't see me. I'm doing a phone motion. But if you're on your phone the whole time, we would look at that as rude.
Right, I do. It's annoying.
But if you're 23, your girlfriend does that all the time. It's what you know.
And when I find that people who are younger typically don't pick up the phone and call you and have a conversation. They're more likely to text. And to me, that's a turnoff. That's a generation thing. That's just weird,
even I've found that I've become more texty than I ever wanted to be.
I'm becoming more that way, but
I still like to have phone calls, but I've found that now that people text so much, they screen your call a lot more than they used to. They used to have an answering machine to screen your call. Now they just hit the red button and I'll call that person later, or maybe not at all.
Exactly. Yeah, times have definitely changed, and I'm used to it as time goes by, but it was so different before. So I kind of.
But with the cars, the part I wasn't saying you should trade down for a younger model, but it is that.
I mean, you could test drive.
Definitely test drive as often as possible, but safely. But if you sell your car and now you have to ride the bus, that was a horrible decision, because a broken down car is still better than riding the bus. And that's why with divorce, when you have a car, things are okay. If you get a new one, things are great. But if you're riding the bus, things kind of suck.
Yeah.
I should have asked you if you rode the bus here before I said that.
No, I don't ride the bus here. I've ridden in New York, but mostly the subway. So, and the subway, is not all bad. I loved riding the subway.
I like the subways.
Yeah, the subway is great.
Like Chicago and stuff, and Washington, D.C. I loved going into D.C. when I used to have to go there for work, because you fly into Reagan Airport and then you can take the little train thing right in the middle of where you need to be.
Yep.
No cabs, no parking, no.
No, the subway in D.C. is super expensive, though.
It is.
But it's very clean. There's no eating. Nobody eats on the subway. You're not allowed to eat. And you can't even take a picture in the subway.
Oh, really?
No, they will arrest you.
Holy crap.
Yeah, you can't do it. Well, they're under the Pentagon.
Even white people?
Anybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't want to get arrested.
I know, right? No selfies in the subway. But yeah. So, well, I guess if we should probably wrap up. But this has been good. I love this list thing, and I want to incorporate lists in all of my.
Well, I'll give you credit, since you, when I asked you what we were talking about, you're like, "Oh, the best and worst thing." I was like, "All right, I can work with that."
I love it. I want to hear this from so many people. It's like, what are the best and worst things? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with the best and worst things, and you have to decide which list it came off of: Craigslist roommates or marriage. So
yeah, I definitely, when I made the list, started realizing the holes. Like, okay, 70% of these I could solve by just not having a roommate.
Right.
But yeah, when you got down drilling deeper,
no, you don't have a roommate now, do you?
I don't. Okay. I don't. Right. I should, but I don't.
No, you shouldn't, because all of the horrible things, like you're just gonna have the bad things of a divorce, if you have a roommate, you're gonna have all the downfalls of a marriage minus the
37 minutes.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. Right.
That should be the title of my podcast: is minus the 37 minutes.
Hey, that'd be a good podcast. So if there's anything that you wanted to leave our listeners with, what would it be?
It would be not to listen to me, because I have a feeling people are going to listen to what I said and say, I got to find somebody, no matter who it is, like right now, or I'm going to be miserable. I realize that is a temptation. If you're a guy, and you got a couple $100, go to a strip club or something, solve your problems that way. Don't rush into it. Have long engagements and do all those kind of things. And even though following Dr. Joy's advice is spending a year of finding yourself, maybe that's a really good idea. I didn't follow it, but because of not following it, I dated a lot of insane people. I swear, I'm kind of hoping that I move from California, because I swear 35% of the women in this state are insane.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
Crazy insane. insane, like boil your bunny, insane, just nuts.
I don't know. What pool are you fishing in?
The bad one,
Yeah.
apparently.
Holy cow.
My fishing pool is limited.
You need to leave Anaheim. Stop dating the ladies at Disney World.
There's a lot of them online there's a lot of pro Disney ladies out there. That's like one of the most common things I see on online profiles is I love to go to Disneyland.
Okay,
flag,
red flag,
huge flag.
Flag.
If you love to go to Disneyland and you dress up like a princess, I'm fucked. Because if I was walking on eggshells before, now I have a princess.
Right.
Holy crap, I can't compete with Disneyland. What am I, put a ride in the backyard or something? I don't know.
A 37-minute ride. There you go.
Hey, all my rides are going to be the exact same length.
So to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Well, we'll leave them on that note then. That's a good one. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for sharing everything with us. This was really fun.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It was a good time.
We'll have you back and your buddy who's helped you out with this list.
Hey, if you want my buddy to come back, I already told him that I would let you know and he could call in.
Perfect.
That's going to be a much more depressing. I mean, this guy's living in his mom's basement right now.
Okay, we have to talk to him. So we're gonna reach out. We're gonna have this on an upcoming episode. We're gonna have you back. We'll Skype him up in Michigan.
I'm just picturing all the listeners crying and the Kleenex sales going up, and he's gonna tell all these horrible stories, but that's cool.
It'll be Tales from the Crypt.
All right, that sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.